At Roland Garros, we have a true blockbuster women's final for the first time in a while, as world number one Iga Swiatek takes on Coco Gauff for the title. Can Iga make it 35 match wins in a row and join the multi-slam champs club, or will Gauff pull off the upset and claim that highly anticipated maiden slam? I'll break down this matchup before giving my ultimate prediction of who I think will lift the winner's trophy here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today. Swiatek and Gauff have met twice, with Iga winning both matches in straight sets. Iga, obviously being the more accomplished player this season, has the greater or better win-loss record and ranking with 5 of her 8 titles coming in 2022. Gauff has spent less time on court than Iga, but in singles. The American has also played doubles in this tournament and is currently in the finals with partner Jessie Pegula. Looking at Gauff's path to the finals, she hasn't dropped a single set all tournament. The 18th seed first eliminated comeback Canadian Rebecca Marino 7-5-6 love before beating Belgian Alison van Oudtvanck 6-1-7-6. Gauff then toppled seed slayer Kaya Kanepi before dominating the only seed she's faced thus far in Mertens. Coco beat compatriot and good friend Sloane Stephens in the quarters before ending Martina Trevisan's semifinal run with a dominant 3-1 beatdown. I feel like Coco's done a good job of working her way into the matches and figuring out how she wants to play them as things go along. In the last few rounds, she's finished much better than how she started, especially against Mertens, where she prevailed through a tough opening set before running away with it in the second, winning at 6-love. The same happened against Sloane and Trevisan, and I feel like she really plays her best tennis when she's being more proactive and is looking for opportunities to be aggressive. Gauff has that rare ability of being able to play both effective defensive and offensive tennis, and in the first few rounds against heavy hitters like Van Oudtvanck and Kanepi, we saw her taking more of a defensive approach where she counterpunched more. The second set against Mertens is where we really saw Gauff combine both facets of her game and really hit full flight. Coco's backhand is probably her best shot, and it's basically been on this entire tournament. The forehand is much more of a question mark, as it is notoriously the shot that's more prone to breaking down in the bigger moments. I've noticed a big improvement off that wing the past couple of rounds for Coco, as she's gotten much better connection and stability with the different muscle movements there. Gauff does have a tendency to arm the forehand and decelerate, but against Stephens and Trevisan, she's been hitting out on that shot nicely. The serve's also been pretty solid, and she's kept the double faults at bay for the most part. Coco's had quite a bit of success up at net too, which is attributed to her frequent doubles play. Moving over to Iga, she opened with 2 comfortable wins over Lesia Sarenko and Alison Risk, losing a total of 4 games in those 2 matches. In the third round, she played probably her least solid match of the tournament and showed her first true signs of vulnerability against Daga Kovanic, but she still managed to survive a bit of a wobble to pull through in straight sets. The Pole then dropped her lone set of the tournament against Xingwen Zhang before running away with it in the final 2 sets. It was business as usual in the quarters and semis, as Iga dominated Jessica Pegula 3-2 before taking out Daria Kasatkina 2-1. The reason why Iga's been cruising through this tournament draw, it seems like, is because she simply does everything better than all of her opponents. Sarenko, Risk, and Kasatkina simply don't have the weapons to trouble Iga, and while Pegula has more of a complete game, it still pales in comparison to the Pole. Zhang and Kovanic tested her the most because they were the only ones that could match Iga's pace from the ground and push her back a bit. However, like she's done this entire season, Iga has elevated her game even more when her back is against the wall, and she ultimately cruised to victory towards the end. Swiatek hasn't played much different than how she played in Rome. She still looks to be in total control of every aspect of the game out there, making that forehand the biggest weapon on the court. Swiatek consistently hit the ball with great pace, which gives her a pretty big edge over opponents right there. Much of that is due to her excellent court positioning, as she takes a lot of her balls on or inside the baseline. Iga has an incredible ability to recognize whenever she has an opponent hurt or on the defensive, and she takes the ball incredibly early. This also takes time away from her opponents and makes them feel like they're being smothered out there. Swiatek's also been really good at keeping her opponents out of the match by snuffing out many of their game or even breakpoint opportunities with solid play. Pegula, for example, had some opportunities to make their match a bit more competitive than what it was, but Iga maintained a high level of tennis during those important moments and ultimately wore down the American. Looking back at Coco and Iga's Miami Open match, things were actually very competitive early on, as Gauff was hanging in there with Swiatek from the ground and did well to step in and take the net. However, like she's done for much of this winning streak, Swiatek elevated her game as the match wore on, while her opponent had a dip in their level. Even though it was 6-3, the first set was pretty competitive, lasting 50 minutes, with the games being fairly tight. However, as things went on, Iga started to read Coco's serve a lot better, which made it tough for the American to even hold. Meanwhile, Iga, who held with far greater ease, used the wide serve quite a bit this match, which was a solid play as it both targets the weaker Gauff forehand and opens the court more for herself. Swiatek also became too tough to handle from the ground and really started to target Gauff's forehand even more, eventually wearing it down. In the second set, Iga totally ran away with it and was hardly even losing points. Things were much more competitive during their Rome semifinal from last year, where Gauff pushed Swiatek to a tiebreak in the opening set before falling in 2. Here, Coco imposed herself a lot more in the rallies, which were definitely longer and more entertaining. This is mostly due to her forehand being much more solid this match, as Gauff really utilized it as more of a weapon. She also served much better here, which gave her greater opportunities to gain the upper hand and move forward. Still, Iga was just too clutch and too good during the important moments, which ultimately got her over the finish line. For Iga to go 3-0 tomorrow, she needs to first keep taking the ball early and impose herself from the ground. As I said earlier, this has been a major facet of Swiatek's dominance, as her eagerness to attack virtually any ball that lands anywhere near the service boxes has paid off tremendously well. This will be a good play against Coco, whose shots can be prone to landing shorter in the court. Gauff's opponents haven't been making her pay as much as they could, so that's a big avenue for Iga. Taking the ball early also takes time away from opponents, which will be crucial against Gauff, who tracks down so many balls. The second point I have for Iga that kind of goes with the first one is to maintain good consistent depth on her shots. This of course keeps Gauff pinned further behind the baseline and prevents her from doing what she needs to do, attack and impose herself in the rallies. Though she's good at it, Coco doesn't want to be scrambling and defending the entire time, especially against Swiatek. The third point for Iga is to pressure Coco's forehand relentlessly. We've gone over this a million times, but Gauff's forehand is the weaker side and is more prone to breaking down in the tighter moments. She's done a greater job with it this tournament, using it as more of a higher spinning shut-up shot. Still, I think it can be exploited if Iga targets it with great pace and weight of shot. Trevisan and Mertens especially weren't able to exploit Coco's forehand as much because they gave her too much time and didn't go at it with a lot of pace. I think Swiatek can eventually break that forehand down if she challenges it and tries to start that forehand-to-forehand battle. The final key for Swiatek is to attack Gauff's second serve. Coco's first serve is very solid, but the second serve is prone to sitting up in the middle of the box, sometimes at risk of being attacked. Iga took advantage of it in Miami, which shook Gauff's confidence a bit and made it harder for her to hold. If she can do the same thing here, it'll be a long morning for the American. Meanwhile, for Coco to be successful, she needs to look to change directions whenever possible. I alluded to this earlier, but Gauff does not want to fall into those forehand-to-forehand rallies where Iga has the upper hand. Changing directions not only combats this, but changes up Swiatek's rhythm and alters the court dynamics. Gauff's been doing this very well all tournament, as her up-the-line shots have gotten herself into greater positioning afterwards. Both the forehand and backhand down the line will be equally important. Also, the few times Kasatkina did this against Iga, she was successful, so if Gauff really commits to this, she can leave the pole flat-footed a couple of times. The second key for Gauff is to mix things up. It's important that Coco doesn't give Iga the same look and the same shots over and over, because once she gets a good feel for the ball and is fully comfortable, it's over. Kasatkina and Pegula were really one-dimensional, which is why Iga was able to run away with the match at the end. Gauff can really hit just about any shot in the book, so if she can possibly vary the height, pace, and spin of her shots and do it consistently, she might have a solid shot at taking some of those longer rallies. The next point for Gauff is to serve strong. This is obviously more self-explanatory, but Gauff's serve when on is a big weapon that can get her free points and easy replies. She doesn't need to be struggling to hold serve like in Miami because that just adds a lot of ample pressure. If Gauff is able to land a decent number of first serves in while also hitting her spots, she'll have a greater chance at applying more scoreboard pressure while also freeing herself up more on return. Speaking of return, Gauff needs to make sure that she adamantly pounces on Iga's second serve. Swiatek's second serve is probably the softest shot Gauff will see from the pole tomorrow, so she needs to use this as an opportunity to be aggressive and impose herself early on. Swiatek's opponents have struggled a lot to make a dent in Iga's second serves, and I feel like they've all taken the wrong approach when doing so. Kasatkina, for example, stood far too deep behind the baseline on her second serve returns and merely got herself into neutral positioning. Gauff did try to step in and take that second serve early back in the Miami Open match, but backed off a bit when she missed more of those second serve returns. Coco has got to make sure that she keeps pressuring that second serve, because if she does so successfully, we could see Swiatek break down a bit and throw in some more double faults. Now for my final prediction, I have Swiatek winning in straight sets, with there being one fairly competitive set like a 6-4, 6-3, followed by a more straightforward 6-3, 6-2, or whatever else. Iga is the huge, overwhelming favorite for this final due to her inability to lose and her history of dominance in the past. Iga seems to really save her best tennis for the finals, as no opponent has managed to win more than 5 games in the championship match in the past 8 finals that Iga has played. Swiatek has far greater experience at this big stage, with most of her titles being 1000s. Gauff has made just 2 tour finals, both of which were 250s. She's had just as much tour experience as Iga, but hasn't gone deep really in the big events. This is going to be a big step up in occasion for Coco, and the time she takes to adjust to this moment could be significant. It's also a big change in class for Gauff opponent-wise, as Iga's by far the best player she'll face this fortnight. Swiatek meanwhile has faced Zhang and Pegula and Kasatkina, who aren't totally off from Gauff's level. It could be a good thing though that Iga is Gauff's opponent, because Coco knows that the pole is going to be a huge favorite here. Matter of fact, she's talked about how she'll be more carefree here in the finals because of this. Obviously Coco will have nerves here playing her maiden slam final, but I think they'll be much more manageable here as opposed to if she played Kasatkina, where she'd have a far greater shot at winning. Swiatek knows that she's going to be the favorite coming into this one, which can bring about extra pressure and tension. They've been rare, but Swiatek is prone to having moments where she's had a dip in level of play. For example, in that third round against Covenant, she was leading 6-3, 4-1, but ended up losing 4 consecutive games and was really negative with herself and was chirping at her box quite a bit. We saw the same thing against Zhang, where she looked in real distress and not like herself at all. If Coco can make things tight early on and keep applying scoreboard pressure, then Swiatek might possibly crumble a little bit, especially with the expectation of the occasion. I do think that Iga is mentally tough though to be able to handle the pressure and expectations as she's shown through this entire streak. However, things will be a bit different here as she's going for slam number 2 and is finally on the cusp of leaving the single slam club. I ultimately choose Swiatek to win in straights because I feel like this matchup favors her very well. She's more superior from the ground than Gauff, who typically fares better in the longer rallies by extending points and extracting ample errors. Swiatek is too good for that at the moment and can't be consistently hurt by Gauff unless the American really hits out on her forehand and is ultra aggressive on her backhand like Collins was in Melbourne. Now Coco does seem to have this different look about her this tournament and has this mature poise about her. She looks to be hungry and determined, and she very well could play the match of her life tomorrow. However, even if she does this, I'm not sure if it's good enough to beat Swiatek, even at maybe 80%, which is why I have the Polish woman raising the trophy in Paris for the second time. Regardless of the outcome, this matchup itself is great for women's tennis, as so many fans are going to be tuned in to watch these two young and talented stars go at it and hopefully build on a strong rivalry in the decade to come. Both young women are so deserving of this. First Iga, who's been putting in the work for the past 2 years to get herself back into position of winning another slam. Then Gauff, who has been patient and has kept her head down and continued to grind despite some of her peers gaining rather unexpected success. These two seem to be decent friends with one another too, and I hope they give us an entertaining and compelling final. That's all for this preview, and let me know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with me having Swiatek win this championship in 2. Also, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post the men's final preview. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today.